This is the story of a disturbing, true Easter horror story I'm going to tell you. It happened a few years ago, and to this day, I can't think about Easter without getting a cold chill down my spine. Listen closely, because the more I tell, the more I realize how lucky I am to be alive. It all started on Easter Sunday. I had gone to visit my cousin Sarah in a small town in Pennsylvania. She lived in one of those quiet neighborhoods where everyone knows each other, and people still leave their doors unlocked during the day. It felt like nothing bad could ever happen there. But I was wrong. Sarah had a little girl named Emma, 6 years old at the time, full of energy and always asking questions. That Easter morning, Sarah had set up an egg hunt in their big backyard. There were plastic eggs everywhere, filled with candies and little toys. It was a perfect spring day, birds chirping, the smell of fresh grass. Everything felt so peaceful. Until Emma found the black egg. Yeah, a black Easter egg. It wasn't something Sarah had put out, and none of us had ever seen it before. I remember the look on Emma's face when she held it up. "Look, a secret egg," she said, laughing. It didn't open like the others. It was sealed shut, almost like it had been glued together. Sarah thought maybe one of the neighborhood kids had added it as a joke, so she told Emma to throw it away. But Emma didn't want to. She said the egg was whispering to her. We laughed at first, thought she was just playing pretend. You know how kids can be. But later that day, Emma started acting weird. She kept holding the egg close, wouldn't let anyone take it. She whispered to it when she thought no one was watching. That night she even slept with it tucked under her pillow. I started getting a bad feeling. I couldn't explain it. It was like the whole house felt off. Cold, even though the heater was on. Shadows in the corners looked darker. The hallway seemed longer at night. You know that eerie feeling like someone's watching you, but no one's there? Yeah, that's how it felt. Constantly. The second night, I heard Emma talking to someone in her room. I stood outside her door. She wasn't just whispering anymore, she was answering questions, laughing. At one point, she even said, "I don't want to hurt Mommy." That stopped me cold. I opened the door slowly. Emma was sitting on the bed, alone with the black egg in her lap. Her eyes looked different, not scared, just blank, like she was in some kind of trance. When she saw me, she smiled and said, "He says you shouldn't be here." I asked her who he was. She just hugged the egg tighter and said, "The boy inside." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing creaking noises from Emma's room. At around 2:30 a.m., Sarah screamed. I ran to her room. Her bed was empty, the sheets torn off. There was a line of tiny, muddy footprints leading out into the hallway. We found Sarah standing in the kitchen, shaking, blood on her arm. She said Emma had scratched her bad. Said her eyes had turned completely black and that she wasn't acting like Emma at all. She kept repeating, "He told me to. The boy in the egg told me to." We rushed to Emma's room. She was just sitting on the floor, rocking back and forth, singing a creepy tune I'd never heard before. She had drawn something on the wall in red marker, or at least that's what we thought until we realized it wasn't marker. It was blood. The drawing was of a little boy with no eyes and a cracked egg for a head. Underneath it, in shaky letters, it said, "Let me out." We called a priest. I know how that sounds, like something out of a movie, but we were desperate. The priest came the next morning. As soon as he walked into the house, he stopped cold. He said he felt something dark here, something ancient. He asked to see the egg. Emma screamed when we tried to take it from her. Screamed like an animal, not a child. The priest managed to get it from her hands. As soon as he touched it, the egg cracked open on its own. But what was inside wasn't right. There were old bones inside. Tiny bones. Child-sized. The priest went pale. Said the egg was never meant to be found. He said it was a vessel, a prison. Something had sealed a spirit inside, and by playing with it, Emma had started to set it free. He performed a blessing right there in the living room, with candles and holy water. Emma passed out during the blessing, and when she woke up, she didn't remember a thing. Not the egg, not the scratches, not even the drawing on the wall. The priest buried the egg in a churchyard miles away, somewhere holy, and told us never to speak of it again. Said if we ever found another one, we should burn it immediately. Not open it, not touch it, just destroy it. Emma went back to normal after that, smiling, playful, her old self again. But Sarah moved out of that house a month later. Said she couldn't stay there, not after what happened. And honestly, I don't blame her. Now every Easter, when I see plastic eggs in the store or kids running around collecting them, I get this tight feeling in my chest. I wonder, what if that black egg wasn't the only one? What if there are more out there, hidden in places where curious little hands might find them? And what if the next person who finds one doesn't get saved in time? So yeah, that's the story I wanted to tell you. A disturbing true Easter horror story that I'll never forget. And I'm telling you this now, not to scare you, but to warn you. If you ever come across a black egg sealed shut and whispering your name, don't pick it up. Promise me that. This is the story of a disturbing true Easter horror story I'm going to tell you. It's not something I usually talk about, but every Easter, I remember it like it just happened yesterday. The memory crawls back into my mind, and no matter how hard I try to forget it, I can still hear the scratching, still smell the old wood, still see the blood. It all happened when I was 16. I lived in a small town in Pennsylvania, the kind where everyone knew everyone, and nothing ever really happened. But that year, right before Easter, something very wrong happened in our neighborhood. There was this old house at the end of our street, the Mercer house. Everyone avoided it. It had been empty for over 10 years. Some said the family who lived there vanished overnight. Others said the father went crazy and did something terrible. I never believed the rumors. To me, it was just an old creepy house with broken windows and a door that never closed all the way. That Easter weekend, my best friend Josh dared me to go inside. We were bored and I was trying to look tough. He said we'd break in, take a selfie in front of the fireplace, and get out. Easy. So we went. It was Saturday, the night before Easter Sunday. We waited until after dark and climbed through a loose board in the back. I remember the smell first, wet wood, mold, and something else. Something that smelled like rotten candy. Inside it was quiet. Too quiet. No bugs, no creaks. Just silence. Our flashlights barely made a dent in the darkness. The wallpaper was torn and the floors were warped, but what really stood out was what we saw in the living room. Someone had set up Easter decorations. I swear to you, it looked fresh. There were colored eggs arranged in a perfect circle around the fireplace. A big chocolate bunny sat in the center, but its face was twisted into a grin that looked wrong, like it had too many teeth. Josh thought it was funny. Maybe the Easter bunny lives here now, he laughed. But I wasn't laughing. Something about that room made my skin crawl, like we were being watched. Then Josh picked up one of the eggs. "Feels warm," he said. The second he said that, the front door slammed shut. We both jumped. Josh dropped the egg, and it cracked open. Dark red goo poured out, not yellow yolk. It looked exactly like blood. And that's when we heard the sound. A soft hopping. From upstairs. Thump. Thump. Josh called out, thinking maybe it was a raccoon or something. But I knew better. Whatever was up there, it wasn't an animal. We ran to the door, but it was stuck. No matter how hard we pulled, it wouldn't budge. Josh went to the window and tried to push the board off, but something on the other side nailed it shut. I saw the nails push in like someone was hammering them in from outside. That's when we knew we were trapped. We turned back, and the chocolate bunny was gone. Only now there were tracks, sticky red tracks, leading out of the rooms and up the stairs. Josh still wanted to explore, said maybe someone was playing a prank, but I begged him to stay. I could feel it. Something was in the house with us. He didn't listen. He walked up the stairs, flashlight shaking. "Hello?" he called out. I stayed at the bottom, too scared to move. He reached the top, turned to look back at me, and then he screamed. I ran up after him, heart pounding. He wasn't there. Just his flashlight, spinning on the floor, and on the wall, smeared in something red, were the words, "Hop, hop, hop. You're next." I backed away, trembling, but something moved behind me. I turned fast and saw it. Not a man, not a person. It looked like a rabbit, but wrong. Too tall. Its ears hung down like wet ropes. Its face was stretched, mouth full of sharp yellow teeth, and its eyes, black, shiny, full of hate. It didn't speak, just stood there, twitching, breathing hard, and then it jumped. I screamed and ran back down the stairs, fell halfway, hit the bottom hard. The lights flickered, and I heard thumping. Again. Thump, thump, closer. I crawled to the kitchen and slammed the door shut. I pushed a cabinet in front of it and hid in the pantry. It was dark. I could hear it moving, scraping its claws on the wood, sniffing. It said something in a whispery voice. "I'll never forget it. Happy Easter." Then silence. I stayed there, for what felt like hours. Finally, just as the sun started to rise, I heard a loud snap. And then, nothing. I crept out of the pantry. The front door was open now. The eggs were gone. The tracks had disappeared. The house felt empty again. Josh was never found. The police said he ran away, that we made up the story. But I know what I saw. I know what took him. Every year, on Easter, I leave an egg on my doorstep. A plain white one, just like the old stories say. You give it an offering and maybe it leaves you alone. But not always. Some nights I hear thumping in the backyard. Sometimes the egg is gone in the morning. Sometimes it's cracked open and filled with blood. So if someone ever dares you to go into an old house on Easter weekend, say no. And if you ever find an egg that feels warm, don't touch it, because it's real. The bunny is real, and he's still hopping. This is the story of a disturbing true Easter horror story I'm going to tell you. It happened to someone I knew, my old roommate Daniel. He wasn't the type to believe in ghosts or anything supernatural. He was logical, practical, and always had an answer for everything. But what happened that Easter changed him forever. Changed me too, because I was there when it all started. It was 2 years ago, Daniel had just inherited his grandmother's farmhouse in upstate New York. She had passed away the month before Easter, and since no one else in the family wanted the old place, Daniel decided to spend the long weekend there. He asked if I wanted to come along, and I said sure, why not? A quiet Easter away from the city sounded perfect. The farmhouse was exactly how you'd imagine it. Old wooden floors that creaked no matter where you stepped. Peeling wallpaper. Dust thick on the shelves. But there was something cozy about it too, or at least there should have been. When we got there, the first thing I noticed was the smell. Not the musty smell of an old house. This was something else. Something sweet, but rotting. Like candy left out in the sun for too long. Daniel brushed it off, said it was probably just something in the walls. But the smell seemed strongest in the attic. We found the attic door half open. Daniel said he didn't even know there was an attic. The door was strange too, painted with faded pastel colors, pink, blue, yellow, like an Easter egg. But the colors were smeared, almost like someone had used their hands to rub them in. Of course we were curious. We went up. Inside it was freezing cold and dark, but in the middle of the attic floor was a wicker Easter basket, sitting perfectly in the center, like it was waiting for us. I still remember how out of place it looked. Clean, bright, with a little bow on the handle. Inside the basket were three things: a cracked porcelain bunny, a hard-boiled egg that had turned completely black, and a folded piece of paper. Daniel picked up the note and read it out loud. It said, "Don't feed him after dark, don't speak his name, and never, ever let him hop." We both laughed nervously, thought it was some weird joke, maybe his grandmother's way of messing with whoever came after her. But then we heard the sound. Thump, 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 coming from under the floorboards. Daniel froze. I looked around, thinking maybe it was an old pipe or the wind, but then the thumping got faster, like something hopping, and it didn't stop. We got out of the attic fast, closed the door, nailed it shut, spent the rest of the day trying to pretend like nothing happened. But that night, the real horror began. It started around midnight. We were downstairs watching a movie when all the lights flickered, and then we heard the sound again. That thump, but this time, it was in the hallway. Closer. Daniel got up to check, but I told him not to. My heart was racing. I could feel something was wrong. We turned off the TV and just sat there, listening. Thump. Drag. Thump. Like something hopping with one leg and dragging the other. We finally built up the courage to check the hallway. It was empty, but the floor was covered in little smudges. Brown, sticky prints, like melted chocolate, mixed with something else. That's when Daniel saw it. At the end of the hallway, just for a second, we both saw a shape. A figure, small, rabbit-like, but twisted. Its head was too large. One ear hung limp, and its eyes, I swear to you, they glowed red. It didn't move, just stood there watching us. Then it was gone. We didn't sleep that night, and the next morning, Easter Sunday, Daniel wanted to leave. But when we went outside, every tire on the car had been slashed. Not just flattened, slashed like with a knife. We tried calling for help. No signal, not even a bar. That's when Daniel said something that scared me more than anything else. He said, "I think we fed it." "What do you mean?" I asked. He told me he had touched the black egg, picked it up, just for a second. It was warm, even though the attic was freezing. He didn't tell me because he didn't think it mattered. But now he wasn't so sure. He thought that maybe just touching the egg counted as feeding it. And then he said, "Last night, I heard a voice. It whispered its name." I asked him what the name was, but he shook his head. Said he couldn't remember exactly, only that it started with a T and ended with hop. We tried to spend the day downstairs, doors locked, windows covered, but things got worse. The house started to feel like it was breathing. The walls would creak, in and out like lungs. The smell of rotting sugar was everywhere, and the hopping didn't stop. Thump, thump, closer, closer. Just before sunset, Daniel lost it. He ran upstairs, shouting, "If it wants me, it can take me." I chased after him, but the attic door was wide open, even though we had nailed it shut. Inside the attic, the basket was gone. In its place, there was just a single black egg. Bigger now, pulsing like a heartbeat. And then I heard it. A giggle, childlike, but twisted. I turned and saw Daniel, standing in the corner, eyes blank, his mouth twitching into a smile. "He's awake now," he said. "He's free." I grabbed him, pulled him down the stairs. The whole house shook. I could hear scratching on the walls, claws tapping on the wood. We hid in the bathroom and didn't move, didn't even breathe. We stayed there until morning, and when we came out, the house was quiet. The smell was gone. Everything was normal. We packed up and left that second. Daniel doesn't talk about it, not anymore. But I know it changed. Him. He barely sleeps. He won't go near Easter decorations. And every year around Easter, he disappears for a few days. Says it's for safety. Me? I avoid Easter baskets, eggs, bunnies, because I still remember that thing at the end of the hallway, the twisted rabbit with red eyes, and I remember the note. Never, ever let him hop. Now listen carefully. If you ever find a basket in a place it shouldn't be, don't touch it. If the egg is black, leave it alone. If you hear hopping, don't move. And most important of all, never say his name. This is the story of a disturbing true Easter horror story I'm going to tell you. Now, I know this sounds like one of those old campfire tales or something you might hear in passing. But trust me, it's no joke. This actually happened to me, and I've been too afraid to speak about it for years. But every Easter, the memory creeps back into my mind, and I feel like I have to tell someone. I don't know why it's so terrifying to me, but once you hear what happened, you'll understand. It all started a few years ago when I was just a kid. I was about 12, and Easter was my favorite time of the year. My mom always made Easter baskets full of chocolate eggs and stuffed bunnies. It was a happy time. This Easter, however, was different. I was visiting my grandparents' house, which was deep in the woods, a good hour outside of town. They lived on a huge old property that was as beautiful as it was eerie. Their house was an old farmhouse, and it had a certain charm to it, but there was always something off. I couldn't quite explain it, but there was an old smell to the house, like dust mixed with something else, something stale. But I loved being there anyway. Easter weekend felt perfect, and I was looking forward to the big family dinner we always ate on the morning of Easter Sunday, after an egg hunt in the yard. I noticed something strange in the woods behind the house. There was a small wooden shed at the edge of the property, something I hadn't noticed before. It wasn't far from the garden, and as a kid I loved to explore. My cousins and I ran toward the shed, curious to see what was inside. As we approached, we noticed that the door was slightly ajar and there was something wrong about the way the door hung. It seemed to be half off its hinges, like it had been opened too many times or forced open. A faint, rancid smell drifted out from the crack. We hesitated for a moment, but then curiosity got the better of us. Inside of the shed was dark, so we used our flashlights to look around. There was old furniture covered in thick layers of dust and rusty tools hanging on the walls. But what caught my attention the most was a large wicker basket in the corner, sitting under a dusty tarp. It looked completely out of place, almost like it was waiting for someone to notice it. "Hey, look at this," I called to my cousins, who were rummaging through the other old things in the shed. I tugged at the tarp and pulled it away, revealing the basket. It was filled with brightly colored Easter eggs, too many to count. They were perfectly painted, vibrant, and fresh-looking, almost too fresh. I picked one up, inspecting it carefully. The paint was smooth and didn't seem to have aged a bit, despite how old everything else in the shed looked. It felt warm in my hand, as though it had been sitting in the sun all day. It was a strange feeling, almost like the egg was alive. Before I could say anything, my cousins crowded around me. "What's that smell?" one of them asked, wrinkling his nose. I didn't know how to answer, but the smell seemed stronger now. It was like something sweet had gone bad, rotting in the heat. But still, we were all fascinated by the basket and the eggs. Without thinking, we each picked up one of the eggs and examined it. The strange part? None of us had noticed the carving on the side of each egg. Tiny, almost imperceptible symbols were etched into the shell like ancient runes or markings. Suddenly, we heard footsteps outside the shed. My heart stopped. "Is someone there?" I whispered, but no one answered. The door creaked open and we quickly scattered. I tucked the egg I was holding into my jacket pocket and ran outside, my cousins following behind me. But when we reached the yard, the feeling of unease lingered. It was as if the air itself had changed. I couldn't explain it, but everything felt off. The trees felt too close, the shadows too dark, and the smell was still there, lingering like a rotten cloud hanging over us. That night, after dinner, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The house felt too quiet. My parents and grandparents were talking in the kitchen, but I stayed in the living room, looking out the window at the dark, still woods. The moon was full, casting an eerie glow over everything. I glanced down at the egg I'd tucked into my pocket earlier. It was sitting on the coffee table, almost glowing in the dim light. The symbols on it seemed to shift in the shadows. I reached out to pick it up again. As my fingers touched the egg, the temperature in the room seemed to drop. My breath became visible, as though a cold wind had blown through the room, even though all the windows were shut. That's when I heard it. A thump, then another, and another. It was coming from the yard, the sound of something hopping, something heavy. The thumping grew louder, and I felt my chest tighten. I slowly stood up and crept toward the window, pulling the curtain aside just enough to peer outside. In the distance, near the edge of the woods, something was moving, a figure. At first, I thought it was a shadow or maybe an animal, but then it got closer. My blood ran cold. It was a creature. It was hunched over, long ears twitching. But it wasn't like a normal rabbit. It was too tall. Its skin was pale, stretched tight over its bones, and its eyes glowed a sickly yellow. Its mouth was wide, too wide, with sharp teeth glistening in the moonlight, and it was hopping toward the house, dragging something behind it. I backed away from the window in a panic, heart racing. The thumping grew louder, closer. It was as if the creature could hear me, could feel me watching it. I ran toward the kitchen to tell my parents, but when I reached the door I froze. The entire family was standing there, their eyes wide with fear. My grandfather was holding a shotgun and my grandmother was clutching a rosary. "Get back inside," my grandfather whispered, his voice trembling. "Lock the doors." I didn't ask questions. I just did as I was told, locking every door and window in the house. We all huddled together in the living room, too afraid to speak. The thumping continued outside, growing louder and faster. Then came a voice, low, guttural, like it came from the depths of the earth. "Let me in." The creature's voice sent a chill down my spine. It was calling to us. It knew we were inside, and it wanted in. For hours, the creature circled the house, never stopping. Every now and then, we'd hear it scratch at the walls, as if trying to break in. But by dawn, the sound stopped. The creature was gone. The next morning when we went outside, the yard was empty. No sign of the creature, no footprints, nothing. Just the faint smell of something rotten in the air. We never spoke of that night again. And every Easter since, then I make sure to stay far away from the woods, away from any strange eggs or baskets that might appear. Because I know what I saw, and I know that whatever was out there, it's still waiting. So if you ever find yourself near an old farmhouse on Easter, keep your distance. Don't touch the eggs. And whatever you do, don't listen to the thumping. It's not a rabbit. It's something much worse.